What's going on, everybody? It is Jamie
And John.
and welcome to Eh-To-Zed Reseller podcast. So this is our first official podcast here on the channel. We've obviously done a couple pre-records on my channel on my monthly vlog that I did, but this is our first just inaugural one, and we've already got a few people subscribed to the channel. I think we only just currently have a trailer posted, but if you're new here, which I'm sure everybody will be, this is Reselling with Jon on YouTube. I'll let you kind of just tell everybody what you do on YouTube.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, basically, I've been here on YouTube for just a little over a year. I just wanted to start documenting my reselling journey, and I've been reselling for a couple of years, and just got on YouTube, kind of mostly focusing on showing what it is that I'm picking up, what I expect to get for it, and then doing a weekly, what sold video, basically. So you kind of get to see the life cycle of the stuff I'm picking up.
Yeah. I would say my channel is very similar. So I'm Jamie, and it's Thrift Onfire on Instagram, YouTube, and pretty much anywhere you can find me. Yeah, same thing. I do a lot of thrift haul type videos, sometimes yard sale, like live at yard sale videos, what solds. Sometimes I'll do informational videos, but mostly it is along those same things, just what I'm picking up, what I'm selling on different platforms like eBay, Poshmark, you name it, right? And I think we're very similar in that way. And I think the whole goal of this podcast is to talk about reselling in Canada or just in general. It doesn't have to be necessarily niche down to Canada, but I think we want to really talk about, different platforms and, different ways to resell.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely some, some points that are relevant to reselling in Canada that U.S. sellers don't have to worry about. So it's good that we get to touch on those a little bit. I know Canadian reseller content's a little bit scarce here on YouTube, it seems like. So, happy to provide an outlet for that, for sure.
Yeah, likewise. And I will link down below maybe our last 4 videos, because we're going to hit different topics here. We did kind of do some other topics in the other one, so we'll link them down below. So if you're interested in going to check them out, you can do that. But I think the first thing we're going to talk about today is, whether we're talking about a platform like eBay, your store size, or a platform like Poshmark, maybe your closet size, or just your listings in general on any platform you're selling on. What size do you really want to start with? There are limitations when you just start too. Like eBay doesn't just let you throw 1,000 items up day one. They just don't let you do that. But do you think there's a big, do you think amount listed to amount sold makes a difference? Or do you think building, reputation is more important? And I guess it really depends on what your goal is, if you're going to be full-time, part-time, or just starting out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot to digest there, but really, I think the biggest thing is understanding what your goals are. And so for me, I'm a part-time reseller. I know how much time I have in the run of a week to dedicate to reselling. And that's probably going to max out at somewhere around like 16 to 20 hours, but most weeks going to be less than that. So I guess it really comes down to what your goals are. But I think that the number of listings you have, or how much you can process, how many listings you can get up per day or per week, that's probably going to change as you just have more experience with it, as you get better at listing, as you start to know your products maybe a little bit better, what works, what doesn't work. But for me, just starting out, when I was starting out getting into the clothing, I really wanted to try to push to get like 50 to 100 listings up, because to me, that's enough variety that you're going to get some eyes on your closet or on your eBay store. And then, for me, it's just been gradually growing it over time. And I am up to almost 1,000 listings now, but that's still manageable because I can list more now than I did back then, because I've got that, more knowledge to draw from. I don't think, your store size matters too much, as long as you have quality items. That's your biggest thing. Like if you're just putting up 1,000 really crappy listings, that doesn't mean a whole lot. You could have 50 really good listings that are going to sell, and you're just as far ahead, right?
Yeah, I think so too. Quality of listing is going to make a huge difference. And it's obviously a lot easier to find those middle of the road items that are worth good money that don't sell fast. And when you're picking up stuff like that, once you build traction on a platform, if you list 5 items a day, the goal probably is to sell 5 items a day. You know what I mean? Like that's not necessarily how the math always works out, but if you're just picking up middle of the line stuff that's gonna basically be how it works. If you pick up stuff that sells instantly, that's obviously what everybody wants, but that stuff's few and far between. And then when you're picking up the stuff that you're going to hang on to for a year before you sell it, that's sort of where your store starts to build up if you don't do a good job picking items.
Yeah. And actually that's a great point, because, when I say that my store's been growing over time, well, a lot of that is like still learning as I go. And yeah, sure, maybe I've listed 5 items a day and I've been selling 3 or 4 every day. But then those 1 or 2 that maybe weren't a great buy, they're still sticking around and still part of the inventory. So, yeah, I agree. I think it does kind of work out that you typically sell around as much as you list once you get going and once you get some traction. But yeah, I don't think there's a real magic number. But really, I think the limiting factor is how much can you realistically process, and that depends on what kind of item you're picking up. How much can you realistically source, process, photograph, inventory, put it, ship and all that stuff in the run of a day or a week? If you're part-time, if you're full-time, maybe it's not as big of a deal. You've got more time in the week, so you can obviously do more in a day. But
yeah, for sure. And items, like you said, for sure. Like if we just talk about a video game, which is one just happens to be sitting here, I could list this in about a minute. Yeah, it's a great game. Also, another great game sitting right here too, right? A couple of Mario titles for the Wii. But I could list those in a minute and a half. A piece of clothing, not so easy, because I need to take good pictures. I need to do a little bit more research. I'm not going to be able to so a video game, I can just cookie cutter and take someone else's listing and maybe edit 1 or 2 things I don't like about it that I think maybe would help it sell. So yeah, like I could probably list 50 video games if I had access to that, in an afternoon, no problem. Clothing, it's a lot tougher. It takes a lot more time and research. And, like every Mario Kart besides condition of the disc is still Mario Kart. A t-shirt is not the same. Condition's going to matter. If somebody shrunk it in the dryer, I've had different things like that happen where you measure things out and you're like, this isn't really, this size anymore.
Exactly. And you know what? I think we're going to touch on this in another topic in this video. But since we're on this, when you're listing clothing, just take measurements. Just put those measurements in your listings and just get it done, because otherwise you're going to get questions. People are going to ask you, what's this measurement? What's that measurement? And you're going to end up doing it anyway. But now you've got to pull it out of storage, get it out, lay it out. Or, so just, yeah, there's more effort in that kind of stuff for sure.
Yeah. And that, when you mentioned about the measurements, I don't know how many times I get asked for measurements and then just usually say, please refer to the photos in the listing. People don't even look that far. Right. So that gives you a good idea of, how important that first picture is too, because that's what you're going to draw people in with the first picture. If you have a nice, clean picture that shows, the best of your item up front, you can show all the defects and all the different things later, but you want to draw them in with that very first picture.
Exactly. At least have one good photo in your listing and make that your cover photo.
Yeah. And then along with that, we could go down the title and SEO. There's so many things with listing, but I would say overall that photo probably really takes the cake. So if you have, bad lighting, or you've just thrown a shirt on your bed that's not made or something like that, it's sort of a turn off to people for sure.
Yeah. And size of store isn't going to make any difference at all if you don't have good quality listings.
Yeah. So I know we talked about this before too, but you had said you get a lot of questions about Poshmark and new people trying to get on a Poshmark. And I've definitely had the same. And I've been doing it long enough that sometimes those little startup things escape you. But I thought it would be a good opportunity now to maybe talk about, Poshmark for beginners, and we can give maybe a few pro tips to people who are just getting into it.
Yeah, sure. And actually, it's funny because as we're filming this, as we're doing this, I just got a message on Instagram from somebody asking me a question about Poshmark. So that's hilarious. Poshmark, I think, is one of those things where, obviously it's geared towards clothing. You can sell other things. I pretty much only sell clothing on there, but I think it's overwhelming for a lot of people because they feel like it's almost like a social media network. What is all this sharing and following people and all this nonsense? Like, I'm going to be honest with you. I started Poshmark in October of 22, And I probably shared less than 10 things in the first 3 months I was part of it, because I did not want to do that. It's annoying. I don't want to do it. But the reality is, and tip number one is, I think you do kind of need to engage at least a little bit in it. And whether that's just taking 2 minutes here or there just to do a few shares or something like that, it does. You're getting yourself out there, because the thing is, when you're sharing other people's things and you're building it up, and now you've got 1,000 followers, 5,000 followers, they're all just sharing your stuff too and getting it out to people to follow them. So, but pro tip. So tip number 1B or 1A or 1-2 or whatever you want to call it is, I strongly, strongly recommend Posh Sidekick. This is not sponsored. I don't make any money from this. You don't make any money from this. But Posh Sidekick is an automation tool that it is a game changer. It costs about $40 a month, but it will do all of that sharing for you. If I was out when I was new, I'd constantly be looking at my phone. I'd see 400 notifications from Poshmark, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that anymore. I have notifications turned off for Poshmark. I don't even need to look at it. So Posh Sidekick will send out offers depending on, like, you set all that up. Great automation tool. It costs $40 a month, but even if that just earns you 4 sales with $10 profit each in the run of a month, you've made your money back. And I know that it makes me at least like 20, 30, 40 sales a month. So, before I move to my next thing, you use Posh Sidekick too, right? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it's great. It took me a while to get on board with that. With it, I was just not sure about Poshmark, so I was manually sharing. Fortunately, when I had my full-time job at the time, I could do it quite a bit at work on my free time. So I was doing that, and I noticed. So what sharing does, if you don't know, not only does it just push it out to people who wouldn't see it, but in the search, if you have a listing of a T-shirt, it pushes, as soon as you share it, you're pushed up to #1 in search results, and then you continuously fall down in search until you share again. Okay, so when you have automation going, it just means your closet is constantly getting cycled and shared and pushed to the top, so it's more visible, and that's certainly what you want. And Sidekick does a great job at doing that. And then the other thing it does great is obviously send out offers, which you can customize to, percentages off and things like that. But I love it. I use Posh Sidekick, or I think now it's called just Sidekick. I think they dropped the Posh because they do other platforms, but I use it on both closets, my Canadian and the US closet.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. It's amazing. Well, okay. I mean, that's definitely the biggest thing I could possibly say is at least, share stuff. So you are getting into those, search results, like you say. Get the Posh Sidekick. It's worth the $40 a month. I mean, maybe not if you only have like 10 items or something, but it does kind of go back now as well with Poshmark. It's like any platform. You need good quality listings. So I know we already kind of covered that in number 1 with store size, closet size, but you really do need good quality listings. And it's not only about the items itself that you're selling. You need good titles. And on Poshmark, it's amazing how many times, like if I'm looking for something myself, I'm seeing 9 out of 10 listings are black T-shirt with dog.
Yeah.
It doesn't even say the title in it. It doesn't say the brand. It doesn't say if it's men's or women's. Like, you have 80 characters, use all of them. And that goes for, any platform with a character limit. Use every single one you can, because every single time, this kind of touches on that SEO, search engine optimization. Every time you make a match with what someone's searching for, that's another little boost you get to the result. To the search result. So yeah, I mean, Poshmark starting out, just the main takeaway is it can feel overwhelming. Don't worry about that too much. Do a little bit of sharing if you don't want to spend the money on the Posh Sidekick. Just be active a little bit. Take 2 minutes. I know most people are scrolling on Facebook, wasting time every day anyway. Cut that in half and do a little bit on Poshmark, and you'll see some success.
Yeah, for sure. I know there are a few free options. I have not really tried them, but I've had a couple people say I should try Flip, I think it's called. Have you heard of that one?
I haven't actually. I
No.
found Posh Sidekick and then just didn't even bother with anything else. But no,
Yeah.
I'm sure there are other great options. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've the same thing. I don't see a reason not to use Sidekick. It's as soon as I got serious about wanting to sell on there, I'm like, okay, well, this takes away the part of it that I don't like, right? The social aspect of it. It was perfect. But yeah, I know there are other, it's not like you have to use this one. It's like, if you don't want to spend the money, there are other options. Otherwise, you do have to share. It is very social. And
Yeah.
if you don't do that, you're gonna, you just don't get the sales, or you get a lot less for sure.
Yeah. I assume that we will probably put some referral codes and things like that in the description. So I believe that I believe how it works is that I would probably both have a referral code that someone can go and get a 7-day free trial on Posh Sidekick. So I'm sure that information will be down below. Anybody watching who wants to try it out and doesn't want to spend the money, go ahead, do the 7-day free trial, and I can guarantee you are going to be hooked.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's pretty great.
Yeah. Another thing, just when you are very first starting out, obviously, like with any new account of anything, you're basically just going to need some basic info. Like you're going to have to put in your address. One great thing about Poshmark is that you can use a PO box. I know some sites don't allow that, but you can go in and set that. And so that's what I've got on mine. I did start out with just my physical home address, but then I got a PO box and decided, hey, this is probably a better idea. So you can do a PO box. So you got to put in your address, and I can't remember if it asks for phone number or not. It might just be to verify it. I'm not sure if that information ends up being, part of any visible label or anything like that. But certainly you'll need that, and you will need to set up like your banking info to receive payments. So I've got mine set up. You just put in your bank account info, and I think you can just put in like if you have a void check, it's going to ask for like your transit number, your branch number, your account number, whatever it is. And so it's pretty easy. That's kind of info you probably have for other things. And, and then that allows you to cash out once you get your earnings, which are received once a buyer actually gets the item, and they have 3 days to look at it and approve it and accept it. Otherwise, you get your money anyway. So they basically have a 3-day window to turn it down if there's an issue. But then once your money's in your account, you can withdraw it at any time. So that is one really good thing about it as well. Is I know with eBay you can set it to whether it's daily or weekly or bi-weekly or monthly or whatever. Poshmark, you can literally just let your balance sit there until you want to take it, or you can use it for purchases. Like it's all in the same pool, which is kind of cool. But
yeah, I know I generally let it sit there for a month and then pull it out. I've heard other people say that they don't like to do that because they don't trust. If something happened to Poshmark, I guess if it went away tomorrow and you have money in there, that money is likely gone. I mean, maybe legally eventually you might get your money. That doesn't bother me as much. But I know I've heard other people say that they don't like to leave it in there like it's a bank. However, I guess it's somewhat personal opinion. And I wish I looked this up, and maybe I'll throw it up in editing. I know just because I went through it with my US account, there's a threshold where you have to enter your taxable information. So in the US, they want your information because they actually give you the 1090, whatever they use in the US. And I had my store put on hold because I couldn't provide the information because I'm in Canada and I had to go through a whole process. But I'm sure there's a threshold in Canada too. Like I said, I'll throw it up on the screen just, in editing. I'm not sure what it is, but that's another thing to be aware of, that pretty much when you're selling online these days, at some point you will be responsible for taxes.
Yeah, for sure. I personally don't remember. It's been almost 1.5 years now. So I personally don't remember if I have had to enter any tax ID, like information, or like, social insurance number or anything like that. But even if they don't give out a T4, like even if they don't actually generate you a report, you are still responsible for doing it. So it's not like as a new seller, you think, oh, Poshmark doesn't give out T4s, I don't have to claim this info. No, like they don't legally have to do that for you. You still legally need to file your taxes and claim your income. So
yes, one of the nice things that I think the government stepped in last year with the HST, right? So now these companies are required to, like eBay's required to, and Poshmark's required to, and I believe even Etsy, they have to collect HST and remit it on your behalf, which is one less thing you have to worry about because obviously it's still all income to you, and depending on your income situation might be different. But yeah,
Yeah.
at least there's that part that they are covering for you.
Yeah, for sure. One other thing I will mention about Poshmark as a beginner, what to expect as far as the shipping goes. Most people probably recognize this already, but if you don't, Poshmark, the buyer pays the shipping and that's all taken care of. You don't even see that. Like that's not even anything to do with the money that you handle or the transaction. When you make a sale, you just get emailed a prepaid label. So that's really great. If you have a thermal printer or something, awesome. You just print it out, good to go. Otherwise, if you're doing paper and scissors and stuff, that's fine too. But you never have to worry about buying postage for Poshmark. So that is a huge advantage, I think, that especially in Canada, Poshmark has over eBay, because they've got that good flat rate shipping, and you don't have to worry about it. It takes all the guesswork out. You print, stick it on your package, good to go.
Yep. Yeah, I wish they were all that simple, to be honest.
Yep.
So what's I don't know if we're going to be on Poshmark or eBay. I think those are your two main platforms besides Marketplace. But how are your sales this week? And this is probably going to be a weekly thing we talk about, just a sale of the week, something that sold, that really, either you're happy to get out of your life or maybe made you a lot of money.
Yeah, well, so I think a couple of weeks ago, I had a really good week where I was talking about how it was almost like Q4 type of numbers. I didn't see that last week. It was down a little bit, maybe about like 75% or something of what I would typically expect. But I did have a couple of really good sales. And one of them actually came out of my own personal collection because I realized how much it was worth and was like, well, I can't justify keeping this. So I need to get this sold. So I sold it on eBay. And it's the N64 Ocarina of Time cartridge only, the gold collector's cart. So
Okay.
I had picked that up for, I don't know, I think I paid like maybe $50 for it a couple of years ago and was like, oh, that's really cool. It's a special edition. And it sells for like $150 plus now. So I sold it for $140. I've still got my other copy of the game, plus emulation and all the rest. So, it wasn't really like a reselling thing or a flip thing, but I mean, $140 for a decorative game, basically, that I was probably never actually ever going to use or play. Had to do it. So all profit too, after fees, of course.
Yeah, that's amazing. That definitely feels good. If you can pull something, that you've had for a while. I love to pick up things that I might use for a while and then flip later. It's sometimes even the reason why I might pick something up, depending on what it is. But yeah, for me this week, it was so I just did another wholesale buy. So I've been doing that recently. I've got a contact they buy things through thrifting, through, I think, the Goodwill bins, through, I'm not sure where all of it comes from. Some of them yard sales, I think. And I've been going and just picking through and buying stuff wholesale. So this last time I went, I spent a good chunk of money. I think my buy cost when I averaged it out was about $10. And the one item I listed sold within about an hour of listing. So it was a Detroit Red Wings jersey. It was a Nike jersey. I think these ones are I think they might be Y2K. I don't think they're 90s or anything. It's not super old, but there's not a lot of the Nike ones out there for whatever reason. Unfortunately, as a Canadian, I don't follow hockey a ton, so I would be guessing how often they use Nike as a brand. But yeah, it sold for $150.
Nice.
Within an hour. Now, the part of it that's maybe questionable is when I comped it to one that was similar but slightly different on the tag. So, and it sold for $200. And then there were a couple other ones that were around the 180. I think I listed mine around 180, but getting a $150 offer in the first hour, it's tough. I know there's been plenty of times where I'm like, no, I'll counter and I'll just wait for someone to buy. Well, you can do that. I've done that before and waited 6 months for the next person to come with a real offer.
Exactly.
Yeah. So these days when I get offers like that, I paid $10, just listed it. I'm seeing $150 laying there. I'm just going to scoop it up. That's totally fine with me. I have no connection to this jersey other than the $10 that I spent on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's great. And honestly, I mean, that ties in so well with the other things we've talked about so far. Is like, so another tip, just don't be greedy, folks. Like, if you're making a great profit margin, I mean, yeah, sure, there might be things where it's like, no, this is too cool. I am going to hold on to this and then, hold out for more money or whatever. That's obviously a very personal decision. But for the most part, yeah, like if you're going to make $140 on something and it took you an hour, like,
Yeah.
like unless it's obviously worth way more than that. But no, that's awesome, man. That's a good sale. I don't know if it was like, I don't know a whole lot about like jerseys and things like that, or like NHL jerseys. I sell a lot of jerseys, but I don't know a lot about like, which ones they use and stuff. But I do know that a lot of Nike stuff that has the center swoosh does better. So if the symbol's like right here at the base of the neckline, it tends to do well. Better than the stuff that's off to a side, like on your chest or something.
Yeah, I think that was made famous by, I think it's, if I'm wrong, someone will let me know, I'm sure. Travis Scott or something like that started wearing the retro middle school ones, and I think they started making them again after, but I think he made it popular, and then the old ones became, worth money again.
Oh, nice. Always good to get some backstory.
Yeah. It's probably 95% factual. That's what I remember, but I'm not calling it 100% for sure.
Hey man, I'm in my 40s too. I understand that. It's like I think I know what I'm talking about. So if I say something and I lie to you folks, it's not intentional. It's because I honestly believed it to be true. I've been wrong before.
Oh sure, yeah, we're all human for sure. I've made plenty of mistakes and don't intend on making more, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna make some more mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily mistakes, but I think the other thing that we were going to touch on today were maybe items from the past that we no longer pick up. And I think it can be kind of a blurred line because things change so much over time, and something that maybe is a no or taboo today to pick up, maybe in the future could be a good thing again. But what are some things that you think you picked up in the last couple years that when you look back now, maybe they were good then, but maybe not so good now?
Yeah, well, I think that I was unfortunate in my timing when I first got into reselling, and I was learning about different things, and especially like once I moved to my new area and got into clothing and stuff, which I've talked about before. But getting into clothing as a new clothing reseller, obviously I was doing a lot of things and watching lots of videos and learning about different brands and things. And I think what happened was, on a couple of these brands, which I'll mention here in a bit, I was watching videos that were maybe 6 months old, maybe a year old. So also watching videos from people in a different region, maybe like Southern US versus in Canada. So a lot of things were maybe just inaccurate for somebody in Nova Scotia trying to sell the same thing 6 months later, a year later, or something like that. So, and especially with clothing, like you say, things come and go out of fashion all the time. Skinny jeans are all the rage. Then it's wide leg, baggy pants again. Skater, punk, back and forth. Who knows? But a few things that I picked up early on that I thought were just an absolute slam dunk was, so for athletic wear, for women athletic wear, the brand Athleta. I know that there are some good things in that brand that I will still pick up today, but thinking about like just regular leggings or yoga pants or things, or even a lot of the tops, I just felt like these were good pickups and I'd make, $10, $15 on each one. And I'm still clearing out some of that old stuff from almost a couple of years ago, on sales that I run or on Poshmark. I just let them go so cheap in a bundle. And so that's definitely one of them. There are still some good things in that brand, but this just serves as a reminder that just because a brand might be really good doesn't mean you shouldn't be looking up certain styles or models, or when you've got certain information, like try to be more specific in the way you're looking up and checking your comps, because again, we go back to looking on Poshmark, blue jeans as the title. Like that doesn't give you the whole story, right? Another thing, outside of clothing, I'd say I don't pick up nearly as much anymore is I don't really dabble in a lot of physical media other than video games anymore. Like, I still look if I see like a whole stack of sealed DVDs or whatever, I'll still look them up, see if there's any random gems in there worth 30, 40, $50. But even getting things at like 10 cents a piece, I don't bother picking up like the big bulk boxes of DVDs. Yeah, you can make some money over time, and I have, but it just, to me, it's not really worth the effort of having to actually pack that order and maybe have made $5. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting more selective, but it's also, to me, not worth like running out of bubble mailers, because I just sold a bunch of cheap DVDs and now, oh crap, I need more bubble mailers for these N64 games I'm trying to sell for $50 or $140 each.
Yeah.
So I'm more selective on that. Yeah, I know there's people who buy like thousands of them and they get them for like a penny, and so if you sell each of those for $4, like, that's money, it's worth it. But it's just not for me.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And I've definitely played around with the DVD game, and it's had its highs and lows for me as well.
Yeah.
But some of the things that I was really thinking about was, so this kind of goes back a couple of years, and I'm sure as soon as I say it, you can kind of put all the time in place. But puzzles and board games was something that was super hot a couple of years ago, but it had more to do with people not being able to leave their homes and that sort of thing, and just things that you would do at home. But puzzles were super hot. I was buying, I'd buy, my local grocery store had puzzles. I could buy them for like $6, $7, $8, and I could sell most of them for 30 plus the next day if I wanted to. They were selling fast. Board games the same way. I've picked them up. They were selling used for good money at one time. Board games is something now I really don't look at. If it's a really rare game, sometimes I find it like maybe sometimes the pieces in Monopoly, if it's a rare game, could be worth money. Piecing out games can be better than actually selling the full game. It has more to do with shipping in some cases. But those were the two main ones really that came to my mind, was really that for physical stuff was puzzles and board games were things that I were very, very interested in selling. Or it wasn't necessarily as interesting. I was just selling a lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. I'm glad you brought up about like, the lockdown and how that really changed things, because I mean, to be quite honest, like, I've been working from home for a few years now. So like my life didn't change a whole lot. So sometimes I can forget about how much of a huge, massive, world changing difference that was for a lot of people. And yeah, I mean, that, thinking about it now, you're right. Like, all of that stuff was going. Video games were super hot. I mean, like, oh my God, like, it was unreal. Today, I'd be lucky if I could sell like a Sega Genesis and Sonic 2 for, $30. But during pandemic times, you could sell a Sega Genesis, a relatively unappealing, console for a lot of people that just don't have great value, and a cheap game, and get like $75, $80 for it. And it's like, yeah, that was a nice bubble market for sure.
Yeah. And that kind of makes me think like, we, even like you say with this, like the Saga stuff, is it worth a lot now? No, but for reasons in the future, whether it's another lockdown, or maybe it's just it grows in value because there's less and less of them. Not so things that we pick or that you may not pick up now. It's not to say that they're not going to be valuable later. It's just really, do you want to hold on to them or hold out on listing them? So it does always change. It's like revolving, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that is I think an overarching tip or just key takeaway that anybody looking to get into reselling should really keep in mind, is that you can only know what you can know, but that information or what's real is going to change constantly. So yeah, you just have to go with the flow, and there's no right answer. There's no right way to resell. There are good tips and practices, sure, but like, you just never know. And you're constantly learning new things. You're constantly like finding out a new thing that's like, oh crap, I got to be on the lookout for that. And then by the time you find one, it's not worth money anymore. And that happens, right? It's just the nature of it.
All right, episode 1 in the books. If you guys have any comments or topics you'd like to hear us talk about, please leave them down in the comments below. And I guess we will see you guys next week.